Former Alabama great says Nick Saban's potential absence could be a huge problem for the Crimson Tide. Hey Dog Nation, I'm Brandon Adams. It's time for Know Your Opponent, presented by the Piedmont Bank. But before we get to that, do you know your banker? The Piedmont Bank thinks you should. They believe that banking is a personal, people-oriented business, and if that's not what your banker believes, then it's time to make the switch to the Piedmont Bank. They're here for Georgia small businesses with locations all throughout the metro Atlanta area. Get to know your banker. Know the Piedmont Bank. Online at Piedmont.bank. And of course, knowing what's going to happen on Saturday between Georgia and Alabama, also important as well. Nick Saban tests positive for the coronavirus. A lot of fans scrambling to figure out what does it mean for this game if Nick Saban is not coaching. Well, former Alabama great Barrett Jones joined us here this week, and one of the things that Jones says is that on game day, Saban's influence on one side of the ball a lot more significant than the other. This is what Barrett Jones had to say about that.
Coach Saban, obviously, he's a defensive guy, so I think he's a lot more involved defensively than he is offensively. I think there are rare occasions where going forward on fourth down, whether to kick a field goal or punt or things of that nature that he's involved. I wouldn't surprise you if he occasionally gets on there and tells the offensive coordinator to run the ball more, knowing him. I think generally in offense, especially lately with how offense has changed, I think he leads the offense up to the coordinators. I think he does put more input in on defense. He doesn't call the plays on defense necessarily, but I think he has a lot more input with the different kind of coverages and how to handle different situations defensively.
So given the fact that, as Jones explained, Saban not heavily involved in the day-to-day operations of the offense, it might make it sound like that Saban's influence isn't quite as substantial on game day as some might think. But Barrett Jones also let it be known that there's another aspect of Saban as a coach that, since he hasn't been around as much this week, could be a problem for the Crimson Tide. Here's more from Barrett Jones on that.
It's not only detrimental to Alabama to not have Coach Saban there for the game, but it's also detrimental that he's not there throughout the whole week of practice. Now, obviously, he's watching the tape and probably giving a lot of feedback, but to not have him in the building this week, giving advice to the guys in preparation, I think probably is equally as big as the actual game itself.
There's no doubt the influence of Saban on practice is a very heavy one. That's why Barrett Jones would be concerned about that from an Alabama standpoint. But the truth is, for Georgia fans, whether Saban's coaching or not, whether his influence is huge and his absence is felt or not, Dog fans still just want to win the game. And that's what we cover for you here. Know Your Opponent. It's presented by the Piedmont Bank. We'll see you again here next week.